Absurd crap! This was the sentiment shared among the new generation after hearing that Trabagia would be added to the bracket. Despite the protests of many of the fighters and their coaches, Ricky was an official part of Kafab's Greenhorn tournament, a dark horse thrown in for spectacle at the expense of the unaware new generation. A dark horse they'd kept their distance from and a watchful eye on as the battle began. At my side A, a woman with a cigarette in her hand and a fire in her heart, with 55 points to her name, the new generation's 11th daughter, Maria Bimama. A woman called Maria was old, around the same age as the nearly 50-year-old Kang Jack. Her long hair, once blonde perhaps, was now a deep top, tied into a bun. Her outfit was composed of shades, a silver grey flared sleeve half jacket over a deep black bell-bottom one-piece with smoky grey patterns and flares that faded into her attire. She took a long, deep puff from her cigarette before crushing it in her hand and taking a fighting stance. And at my side B, a man rumored to come riding on the winds of battle, carrying a feather in his hair and 52 points to his name, new generation's 13th son, Quinn Featherwall. Quinn was a tall man with a strong physique, his bronze skin clashing with his outfit. A deerskin dress shirt with tassels, especially long ones running down his sleeves while his pants were tucked into his boots. And true to the announcer's words, he had a pair of feathers tucked in his ear. It's time to continue the show, folks. Let's get these fighters fighting, the announcer shouted, the enthusiasm in his voice and the cheers of the crowd significantly weakened with the arrival of Trabagia. Soon the bell rang, and the referee fell back, beginning the battle with Brimama making the first move. Near instantly after the ref stepped back, Brimama exhaled harshly, blowing out the copious amount of hot smoke into Featherwall's face, forcing him to roll backwards. Despite his quick movement, Quinn still found himself coughing, unable to breathe as a large cloud of grey smoke surrounded him and coated his vision. Before he could attempt to escape, he found himself kicked from the side, his lungs filling with smoke, while the older opponent planted a foot on his shoulder, his face obscured by a swirling sphere of misty grey. An astounding start, ladies and gentlemen. Will this battle end as quickly as it began? Will the victor of this battle be Maria, the Smoke? As the crowd cheered, Quinn could feel himself fading, losing strength as the smoke took space in his lungs. But the man remained undeterred. With the fierceness in his eyes, he turned his head towards Brimama, making her taste her own medicine, exhaling suddenly. With air rapidly rushing out, the surprised Maria found herself blown backwards while Featherwall skidded away on the ground, propelling himself out of the fog of smoke, quickly getting into a kneeling stance. Quinn brought his hands to his sides as he rose, brought them up above his head and towards his inhaling mouth, bending a great deal of air into his lungs, revitalizing himself. Wasting no time, Quinn quickly crossed his arms before throwing them to his sides, leaning in as he blew a large blast of air that pierced through the smoke cloud, leaving a massive gaping hole down the middle of it. Wanting to clear it all away, Featherworn prepped for yet another air blast when the two remaining smoke clouds reared back and rushed forward, converging on Quinn in a pincer attack. With little time to move and nowhere else to go, Quinn aimed towards the ground and blasted himself up into the air, just as the hot smoke crashed together. Look at him fly, folks, escaping with the wind. Oh, but what else could be expected from Quinn, the Hawk? While the crowd cheered at his introduction, the Hawk scoured the field for his foe, assuming she'd attack while he was in midair. He was very correct. From beneath him, the smoke he left behind swirled about and became a spiraling bullet, shooting out towards the unsuspecting fighter. Noticing too late, Featherwall threw his palms beneath him in a panic, a thin wall of air separating him from the attack. Painfully hot and overwhelming, it tore his barrier away and engulfed him in a scalding grey, his voice crying out in pain. Back on the ground, Maria took deep, desperate breaths, fresh air filling her lungs as the smoke sphere she'd adorned to protect her from her own element was no more, absorbed as part of her attack. Got that too close. Damn, the smoker sighed out, thinking of her next move as she waited for her opponent to crash down. Wait! Feeling something off, Maya looked above her, smoke stirring the air and obscuring her opponent, his position imperceivable as the cloud began to swirl about once more, falling towards Brahmama. The smoke archetype immediately brought her hands down to one side, pulling her element away from the air, only to find much of it still spinning into the eye of the storm, removing just enough to see the eye cupped between the hands of the hawk. With a war cry, Quinn threw his hands down to Brahmama, the smoke tempered with the full force of the wind as it crashed down to the older fighter. With too little time to react, Maria simply opted to shield herself, in vain, getting knocked to the ground headfirst. With her lungs still recovering and air polluted with smoke, she found herself unable to rise before the end of the count, leaving Quinn as the winner. The next match was a fair bit shorter, with Carlton Iocus on side A and Levin Lanewand on opposite side B. Carlton was a frizzy-haired man in his 20s, with eyes bleary as he stood on his spot, wide smile on his face. His outfit was odd. Baggy, loose-fitting overalls over a long-sleeve red striped shirt, a strap hanging over his shoulder. His nose and cheeks were bright red, a 5 o'clock shadow painted on his face, with a seltzer bottle hung from his hip, an archetype legal tool, as some of the coaches were telling their students. The oddest thing about him, though, was how unsteady he seemed, his body listening one way or the other. Lanewand, on the other hand, was more uniform, formal even, matching mint green vest and suit pants over a white dress shirt, complete with white boots. Though, much like his opposition, he couldn't seem to stand still, heel bouncing up and down as the two were introduced, and even as the referee kept them split. As soon as the battle began, Levin struck out, a clean punch to Iocus' face. The odd-looking fighter fell stiffly, head tilted back as it approached the ground, and pivoted, Carlton's entire body flipping like a lever. Lanewand, taken aback, halted whatever assault he'd planned, mouth agape as Carlton rolled back on his feet, flicked a finger out into the air, liquid from his bottle jetting out into Levin's mouth and down his throat. Green-clad fighter cried out in terror while his foe snickered, calmly standing up while the man dry-heaved, glaring at Iocus with a mix of confusion and panic, burning sensation in his throat. "What is this? The hell did you make me?" Before he could finish his sentence, Carlton casually flicked a finger out once more. Cheery smile on his face as once more Lanewand found himself downing the spicy liquid. While his foe shrieked in terror again, Iocus unhooked his seltzer bottle and held it aloft for all to see, while proudly declaring its contents. "Vodka!" the frizzy-haired man shouted nasally, turning the nozzle on himself before spraying its contents down his throat, an exaggerated sigh of satisfaction following shortly after. The crowd couldn't help but burst out laughing at this absurd display, tension melting away as Iocus bowed and Lanewand dry-heaved. This is something, folks, the announcer spoke between laughs, trying his best to get his breath back. You better watch out for broken funny bones when around Carlton, the clown! While the audience cheered and Lanewand recovered, Felix looked with confusion and posed a query. "Vodka arts?" More like water arts with an alcohol requirement," Goldbug explained to his pupil. "If I had to guess, it's probably like my B, a limitation on the form of one element, though this doesn't seem as strict." "Definitely funnier." Once Lanewand was back on his feet, he quickly found himself unsteady, his face flush as he stumbled into a crude fighting stance, now bleary eyes bearing down on Iocus. "You'll pay for this," the green-clad fighter slurred out, doing his best to steady footing as he twisted his torso. Behold the true power of the chameleon!" With gritted teeth, Lanewand began to spin wildly on one leg. light shimmering around him as he spun. The lights became brighter and brighter, a great light flashing before the arena before fading out, the field visible once more. To all surprise, with a thud, Levin had vanished. With a thud? Only a moment after the young man had disappeared, his body began to fade back in, lying on the floor unconscious. Unceremoniously, the clown leaned over his passed-out foe, clicking his tongue in feigned disappointment before addressing the crowd, thumb gesturing to the unconscious chameleon. Lightweight. With that sobering statement, the sixth battle of the Greenhorn tournament went to Carlton Iocus. Well, folks, these past 2 fights had been like lightning rounds. Will we get a third? Let's find out! Fighters to my sides A and B, let's get the 7th match underway! Jesse's starting to fight. Any idea what she is? Felix asked his stubbled friend. Couldn't say. She already won a bout when we met up during that street fight. The place was in shambles, so perhaps something that packs a punch? Speaking of packing a punch. Huh? The boys found their eyes drawn to their friend as she took her place on the field with her foe. At my side A, a quiet beauty with an air of elegance and a cold look that could freeze the ocean solid. Coming in with a whopping 45 points in the exhibition match, the 7th daughter of the new generation, Jessica Vokerund. The young woman stood stiff as the crowd washed her in cheers, her eyes staring straight ahead, hands balled into fists as she resisted the urge to cover herself. Her outfit consisted of a pure white lace long-sleeve shirt, reminiscent of an opera gown with it nearly being off-shoulder, deep V-neck plunging down to her midriff into a pair of sports shorts, while becoming aqua green with the frills coming from pant legs and continuing from the thigh-high leggings to her odd winged boots. Her face showed no emotion, but was dyed a deep red. That outfit's out of character for her, isn't it? Felix exclaimed, confused. Perhaps Jessica simply has an eye for the allure? It certainly will tailor to her. Remy chuckled to himself, admiring the brunette as the announcer continued. And at my side B, a rugged man from the frigid north. Or is it the land down under? He won't say, but damn is he mean looking. Coming in just behind his opponent with 44 points to his name, new generation's 8th son, Justin Hughes. The man called Justin was tall, brawny, and had hair covering every part of him, his chest bare to the world, outfit consisting only of a pair of torn mustard yellow jeans and a brown boxing boots. It's beauty versus beast, folks. Who will win? Only one way to find out. Let's ring this bell and get to fighting. Let the 7th match begin. The fighters quickly entered their guards as the referee kept them split. And once the bell rung and the ref fell back, it was Jessica who made the first move, striking at Hughes with a high kick. She found her attack blocked, but undeterred, the young fighter pushed against her foe's arm and spun into a heel kick, tearing away his guard. Enemy guard broke and broke into a barrage of blows, pelting the older fighter's chest with unrelenting fervor, only to find her attacks parried. Hughes having recovered surprisingly quick, with Jessica on the offensive, Justin waited patiently behind his guard, deflecting and dodging her attacks while he could, never letting one slip past him properly. Tiring of this dance, Hughes intercepted one of Jessica's jabs with a long guard, wrapping his arm around hers, pulling the younger fighter into a painful headbutt, sending her rolling back. Vokerund clutched her head for a moment, kneeling in pain as her opponent stepped forth to begin his own assault. Wanting to recover a moment longer, the younger fighter rose and began to back away, reforming her strategy with her opponent's recovery speed, technique, and strength in mind. However, she would not be granted much in the way of time, for as she backed away, Hughes reached down, hands clawed as his fingers burrowed into the ground, and for the growl, were flung out toward Jessica. Expecting an Archetype attack, the young woman put up a crossguard and kept backing away from her opponent, hoping to keep out of range, or to be grazed. Instead, she found her foot colliding directly with it, or rather, the lack of it. Whoa! Jessica cried out in surprise as she fell back, her footing suddenly replaced with air. Foot falling into a shallow ditch as she collapsed. In fact, she found the ground she fell upon planted with similar shallow ditches. Before she could fully process this, her older opponent made a dash for her, hands reeling back as he stepped along the flat ground between the ditches. Quick to notice this, Jessica began to rise once more, rolling aside just as Hughes swiped above her, wind whistling as the earth she'd just been laying on was scarred, thin cuts wounding its face further. Not letting up, Hughes roared as he began to wildly swipe at the air, Vokerant managing to roll into her feet in time to dodge fluidly, though still finding herself nicked as she circled her foe. With a strong idea of her opponent clear in her mind, the alluring brunette kept her arm at length behind her opponent, slipping a punch into his back whenever possible. Soon enough, Justin overextended his attack, reversing his turns in hopes of intercepting the young woman's path, just to find his arm caught, Jessica quickly kicking his legs in and forcing him to collapse to his knee, while she peppered his head with more. Not keen on suffering this treatment, Hughes quickly attempted to swipe at his foe with his free hand, only for Vokerant to plant her boot under his captured arm, using it as leverage as she began to pivot and haul Hughes above her, deftly ducking the air blade. With a cry of effort, Jessica swung her opponent over her head and slammed him into the ground. As the audience cheered in awe at the display, the two fighters took a moment to recover, Jessica quickly rolling her shoulders before attempting to descend on the writhing Justin, hoping to punch him out for a victory. This hope would not bear fruit, unfortunately. Once more demonstrating his recovery prowess, Hughes rolled onto his side, just avoiding the girl's punch before rising enough to swing his arm, hook slipping behind a hastily put up guard and into Vokerant's head, knocking her to the ground. Not letting up, the older fighter rose to his feet and swatted the air with his other hand, stepping away while Jessica somersaulted backwards, avoiding the blades once more. The young woman had only a moment to process the sight before Hughes began to wildly swing at her again. Instinctively, Jessica took a deep breath, her voice squeaking out before she clenched her teeth in frustration and madly sprinted towards her foe. The wind lashed at her, tearing at her flesh as she moved towards Hughes, head down and guarded as the barrage of blades whipped away. Only a few feet from collision with her opponent, Jessica put as much power into her legs as possible. For just a moment, increasing her speed further, catching her wind-flinging opponent off guard as she let down hers and threw her head into his nose. A cry of pain escaped Justin's lips as his head was thrown back, his opponent undeterred as she managed to halt her momentum, following up with an elbow strike to his stomach. Doubled over in pain and breathless, Hughes could only watch as Vokerant brought her clasped hand to his side, and with a war cry, slammed him into the older fighter's chin. His head thrown back once more, Hughes let out a pained groan as he fell to the ground. And with too little air for his rattled brain to recover, he could only struggle fruitlessly as he drifted into unconsciousness. The count came and went without flaw. That's the match! The winner of the 7th bout of the Greenhorn tournament is Jessica. Thus, before the announcer could finish his bit, Jessica hurriedly grabbed the mic head, eyes pleading with him not to say her archetype. I guess it's just Jessica for now, folks. Winner of the 7th match, Jessica Vokerant. She won without using her archetype, Felix said amazed, his coach chuckling at his reaction as he patted his back. Sounds familiar, don't it? Just goes to show, powers aren't everything, huh, kid? Yeah, but Jessie seems frustrated, doesn't she? Goldbug looked carefully towards his pupil's friend, her eyes downcast, knit brows above them, and hands balled into white-knuckled fist as she stood, awash in the glory of her victory. Well, it's still a solid win. Come on, you two should go congratulate her. Hey, who said you could take my student? Old bug? Ignoring Kusaha's protest, Goldbug pushed the boys along the benches to give praise to their friend, her coach already ahead of them. Well done on your victory, Miss Vokerant, Jessie's coach praised. A most excellent display of martial prowess, if I've ever seen one. Canzone, you're too loud, Jessie grumbled as she stepped back to the sides. Ah, my apologies, but this is a momentous occasion. Your first victory in an Archetype Makai combatant. But you seem displeased. Is something the matter? I choked, Jessica confessed, Canzone confused as she continued. Before that last sprint, I tried to bend. I've been in similar spots during training, but I couldn't do it this time. Cedric nodded his head, silence heavy in the air for a moment before he spoke. Our archetypes are not so easily mastered, and I think you know full well how different sparring and genuine combat is. Canzone placed his hand gingerly on his student's shoulder. You should be proud of yourself. Being able to change tactics so readily is no easy feat itself, nor is defeating a power without using your own. Jessie glanced at her coach, her smile wide as an ocean and warm as the sun, steadily easing her worries. Ford did it without an archetype. The young girl pouted to her master's amusement. Well, let that be another item of which to compete against Mr. Veladores, and to hold over Mr. Jupardet, of course. Jessica gave a soft smile to her mentor as he chuckled, her lightened mood quickly turning to panic, however, as she heard her friends call her name, turning to see them only a few meters from her. Hey, Jessie! Congratulations on you! Too close. The young woman cut off her silver-haired friend, hurrying to cover herself. Bit late for that, isn't it? We just saw you fight. Afraid young Remy is right, Miss Volkerant. I understand your reasoning behind this attire, but if you're going to let yourself get flustered, then it's not really working how you wished it to. So she did come up with this? Felix thought as the young woman before him grit her teeth in frustration and let her hands fall reluctantly. It looks pretty on you. Thank you, Felix. Agreed. Form-fitting and nubile. Oh, you're dead, 14. Huh? The three mentors laughed as the young students squabbled amongst themselves, eventually stepping in to break it up. Okay, ease up, little lady, Goldbug intervened. Can't have you beating my boy's opponent before they duke it out. Still, you're a natural null, huh? Null? Felix inquired, everyone around him shooting him surprised gazes. Suddenly I'm the weird kid, I guess, the young demon thought. You don't know that one. Guess it's not too surprising. Sorry? No, it's bound to happen one of these days. Besides, Dylan turned his attention from his pupil to the field. You kids have bigger problems than trivia right now. All right, the field's been repaired. It's about time for the battles to continue, ladies and gentlemen. King Jack and Anna Vosser. To my sides A and B. Let's get the 8th match underway!